Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, August 31st, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps and steps and steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal, the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, we are back. Slightly extended vacation. Trump attacks the mayor of Portland in the wake of the shooting death of a right-wing provocateur. Protester, maybe. Meanwhile, he's heading to Kenosha tomorrow, despite Wisconsin governor's request that he not. Big Oil looks to inundate Africa with plastics in anticipation of their business collapsing. Meanwhile, another 1 million people have lost their jobs as of last week. COVID surging in the Midwest now. And Treasury gave up the ghost, or the game, I should say. The payroll deferral is a cruel scam. Millions are getting their political information from Facebook, and it's dominated by the right wing. Rod Rosenstein secretly quashed a counterintelligence investigation into Trump's business ties to Russia. New York public housing advocates were duped into appearing at the RNC, and it is primary day in Massachusetts tomorrow. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for your patience. We had just a series of really almost impossible internet foibles. Matt is watching the show, I think on his phone, because he doesn't have internet now. I had lost my internet, got it fixed. But we are back from vacation, albeit an hour or two late, and feeling rested and relaxed as much as I can. Of course, all that went out the window at 11:45 when my internet kicked out. But we shall endeavor to persevere. We obviously missed the RNC and the last night of the DNC. I'm going to talk a little bit, just in very broad strokes, about the RNC, about the DNC, about the difficulty I think that Joe Biden is going to have, at least going forward a little bit. I still am remaining positive and hopeful, but folks need to be very clear that this is not in the bag by any stretch of the imagination. And we will talk more about that as we go forward. Obviously, a lot of violence taking place over the past week. 3 people shot, 2 people fatally in Kenosha by a radicalized right-wing 17-year-old boy who was brought to was traveling with his mom. Also, apparently got some water from the cops before he went about shooting, or at least some concern and some appreciation for the work he was doing. Meanwhile, in Portland, Unclear, according to police at this point, whether the shooting was political or not, but a Patriot Prayer was shot and killed in Portland. Donald Trump getting into fights with the mayor, Wheeler. And we will get to all of that momentarily. Let's start, though, with Mark Meadows, the president's chief of staff. He is on Meet the Press, and he wants you to know, and this was the message at the RNC. And I'll break it down a little bit more as to who the message is geared towards. But you'll recall, I mean, you need to put all of this into context, and I'm going to repeat myself a couple of times here about this. But the strategy in 2016, as articulated, I think it was either Chuck Schumer or Ed Rendell. Nevertheless, for every one blue-collar worker we are going to lose in Pittsburgh, we're going to make up with 2 or 3 suburban people in the suburbs outside of Philadelphia. And we're going to replay this in Ohio and Wisconsin and Michigan. That's what they said. That was what their theory was. Joe Biden is attempting to basically make this exclusively a referendum on Donald Trump. And the Republicans are concerned about losing these suburban women voters. The entire RNC was dedicated not to convincing the broad American public that Donald Trump cares about black people or cares about immigrants. There was basically 2 very specific targets. One was Republican women in the suburbs. They need permission to vote for Donald Trump again. And the RNC served or attempted to do that. The other is African Americans and Latinos. And Trump is polling better with them than he did the first time around. It's not huge. It doesn't need much. Meanwhile, here is Mark Meadows attempting to, again, speak to those Republican women. That is what they're doing. They're shoring those up. They know they cannot win more votes in this election, but they can in certain states win more votes and perhaps win with the Electoral College. Here's Mark Meadows.
I wanted to start with this. The president on Thursday night painted a picture of what he said would be Joe Biden's America. And I look at the violence this week, Mr. Meadows. This is in Donald Trump's America. How much responsibility should voters be giving the president for his inability to keep the streets safe?
Well, I mean, you can try to reframe it that way, Chuck, but that's just not accurate. I can tell you that when we look at Kenosha, in the phone calls that were made to the governor of Wisconsin, we offered help. Help was denied. Obviously, there was multiple gunshots and people lost their life. We made a repeated call then the next day, sent in National Guard, FBI agents, U.S. Marshals to restore peace in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And that's what needs to happen in Portland. You know, it's interesting to see you frame Portland that way. After 94 days, perhaps now we're going to act because someone was shot last night. But to suggest that somehow it's been peaceful in Portland, Chuck, is just not looking at the facts. We've had over 200 anarchists, and they're not peaceful protesters. These are people that every single night conduct violent acts, and it is in Democrat cities. You know, you want to talk about Donald Trump's America. Most of Donald Trump's America is peaceful. It is a Democrat-led city in Portland that we're talking about this morning, who just yesterday denied help once again from the federal government. And so, listen, we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to make sure that we hold people accountable. Right. And ultimately, we need to make sure that these people that are conducting these acts go to jail. We've had over 97 federal law enforcement arrests that were conducted.
All right, we don't need to hear any more about this, because this largely this frame is, first off, it is a frame that just plays right into the Trump administration. This idea that it's really about who is deploying what type of police onto the streets to deal with this. The real question isn't what is the federal government doing to deal with the violence or the polarization. It's that Donald Trump. I mean, this is the line they used with Barack Obama. Barack Obama was the most polarizing president in our history. Every day they would hit this. And this is the question that needs to be asked. Like, how do you not take responsibility for the polarization and the environment that's created? This is going to be it is going to be a political problem for Joe Biden. That's just, I think, the reality of it. The question is he going to be able to deal with it? And I'm concerned about that, frankly. But the bottom line is this is Trump's America. And eventually there will be cities, I would imagine, that are going to see some violence that are not Democrat cities, as they call them, but are cities where maybe a Republican is the mayor or something. But of course, cities is where you have the highest concentration of poverty, generally, in terms of concentration, and where you have the largest problem with policing issues. And so it makes sense. That's where we're going to be seeing people protesting and a certain amount of violence. I hope the Biden campaign figures out how they're going to handle this, because so far it's a little bit concerning. And now we should say again that there's no evidence at this point that the Trump administration is making a lot of hay out of this. But they will. There's time. Got a couple of sponsors today. As you know, I've told you in the past, hiring can be very challenging, particularly for a small business, although I imagine for a big business too, but I have no idea. But certainly for a small business. I've got about 50 different things to think about at any given point. I don't really know how to go about finding people for any job. Last time we needed to hire somebody, we used ZipRecruiter. They had been advertising with us. I figured I'd give it a try. Monica Starks, also same problem. She is a real ZipRecruiter company. She needed to hire for a pivotal role at her construction company called GS Group. She, like me, was having a tough time finding the right person. There's a ton of candidates out there. You don't know how you're going to reach them, though. She switched to ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter does not depend solely on candidates for your job finding you. They find them. That's what happened with Brendan. That's how we hired him. That's how Monica found Lamont Jenkins. She said that ZipRecruiter sent Lamont's profile to her around 5 minutes after she posted her job because he was a great match for the role. Through ZipRecruiter, Monica's company hired everyone from accountants to project managers to field scientists. The Majority Report, we just really basically have one job, producers. But that's where I found Brendan. Monica is not the only employer who loves ZipRecruiter, because I also do. And what have I told you? The best time to find someone for your job is when you don't need to hire somebody. Go out there, see who's out there, create a list. They help you organize the whole thing. Be ready for that moment, because you don't always get your 2 weeks notice from people, and you never know what comes up. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter, they get a quality candidate within the first day. See for yourself how ZipRecruiter makes hiring faster and easier. Try it now for free. That's right, free. At ZipRecruiter.com/majority. That's ZipRecruiter.com/majority. MAJORITY. ZipRecruiter.com/majority. Also, as you know, at least if you have a kid, for me, other people, it's, want to deal with their friends and family. For me, I am constantly looking for ways to engage with my children. It's very difficult. 7-year-old only cares about Legos. 15-year-old only cares about not dealing with me. Hunt a Killer. It's a new way to do game night. Gives everybody the opportunity to have fun, work together, investigate crime without even having to leave the house. So what Hunt a Killer is, it basically changes the way that you interact with murder mysteries. You're not just a passive viewer. Mila loved Law and Order, and so that's what made me think this is the thing to do, this Hunt a Killer. And we love it. It's a murder mystery subscription box. It has over 2,000 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. With each delivery, what they send you is audio or documents or all sorts of different types of evidence. They give you a case file, and each box basically eliminate possible suspect. They even have like a spoiler-free online community, has something like 100,000 members, so you can share theories, help each other out. This is great if you're trying to interact with your child without a screen. Like I say, you can go onto that spoiler forum, but it's fun. It's challenging. It's helpful if you're obsessive like I am at times. It's exciting to get the latest dump of documents and evidence. You're going to love it. And right now, for our listeners, you can go to huntakiller.com/majority. Use the promo code majority at checkout for 20% off your first box. That's huntakiller.com/majority for 20% off and show your support for our show. That's huntakiller.com/majority. And lastly, most people say they want to use natural products, but something like 2% of everybody who do say that end up using it because it's difficult to figure out what are the best natural products to buy. Well, where do you start if you want to use natural cleaning products? Grove Collaborative. It's the online marketplace that delivers healthy home, beauty, and personal care products, and they deliver it directly to you. Grove Collaborative takes the guesswork of going green. Every grove.co, it's grove.co, product is guaranteed to be good for you, your family, your home, and the planet. I've leaned on Grove heavily through this coronavirus thing. First off, because I'm trying to get off those sort of like other big services, but you can get your no-scented soaps. Yeah, Mrs. Myers, 7th generation. The 7th generation is basically my go-to. I get the no-scent dishwashing soap. I get the no-scent hand soap. No-scent hand soap. They got all sorts of great products there. Cool sponges. They have concentrated cleaners that you keep in a little like dry box and put it into your own like spray bottle. Good stuff. And the guide is very helpful to get a sense of like what stuff you need, what's going to be effective and what's going to be safe. With Grove, you don't have to shop in multiple stores. You don't have to search endlessly online to get all the natural goods you need for you and your family. Join over 2 million households who have trusted Grove Collaborative. It's grove.co to make their homes happier and healthier. Plus, shipping is fast and free on your first order. For a limited time, when listeners go to grove.co/majority, you'll get a free cleaning gift set plus free shipping with your first order. Check it out, grove.co/majority to get this exclusive offer. Grove.co/majority. Check it out now. All right, let's get back into this. I alluded to a little bit of what I wanted to talk about up front, and that is the RNC was geared towards convincing Republican, primarily women in the suburbs, that Donald Trump is not the creep that you think he is. So we're going to pardon an African American guy and show that all this talk about Donald Trump being racist? No. We're going to have a naturalization ceremony during the RNC. Remember, I want to just make this clear. So much of what went on during this this convention was illegal under the Hatch Act. I know that's tiny stuff that people perceive it, but there is a genuine slippery slope here. When you're talking about using taxpayer resources for your own campaign. But meanwhile, you got a naturalization ceremony. They put on housing advocates. We didn't see any housing advocates, as far as I can tell, on the DNC. Now, it turns out that they duped 3 of 4 of those public housing advocates and tenants. They didn't know that the interview they were doing was for the RNC. In fact, 3 of them said, like, I don't like Donald Trump. I'm actively campaigning against him. This was on Tuesday of last week. The convention showed a video of 5 new American citizens, and then 4 tenants of the public housing were, I think they were on Wednesday night. And the Times reached out to them, and they had no idea that they were being recorded for the RNC. But nevertheless, the fact that you and I know that Donald Trump and the Republicans are a little scummy in that regard, that's not the issue. The issue is that Republican voters in the suburbs were looking there for a reason to not believe the narrative that they have come to believe. It is easier for them, all things being equal, to vote for the Republican because they're Republicans. And when Donald Trump is up there, they apparently had a multiple of like 3 Black and Latino speakers in their convention than they actually have in their administration. But again, the game is to make Donald Trump seem to give license, essentially, to suburban Republican voters to vote for Donald Trump. Now, this is a problem because the entire DNC was geared on trying to convince those people to vote for Joe Biden. And that strategy is all well and good if Donald Trump is incapable of doing what he did do. And I don't mean him, I mean his operatives at the RNC. And their plan, I don't know if it's a winning strategy ultimately, but they realize, by they I mean the Trump campaign, they're not going to get as many votes as Joe Biden. It's just not going to happen. But they're looking to a couple of specific states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida. And they're trying to win by making sure that all of those Republicans in the suburbs vote Republican. And they're hoping that Joe Biden will not be able to mobilize enough voters in the cities to overcome that. I mean, that's the story of Pennsylvania. That's the story of Wisconsin. And that's the story of Michigan in 2016. The margins were just not high enough in the cities, in Milwaukee, in Philadelphia, in Detroit, to overcome what Donald Trump was doing in the suburbs and in the rural areas. And the problem that Joe Biden has is that he's not doing anything to mobilize these voters. Their strategy so far has been to hang back, let this be a referendum on Donald Trump, hope that, and when you let it be a referendum, what you're also saying is like, we're not necessarily focusing on driving people to the polls who wouldn't otherwise vote. And when you focus on Republicans in the suburbs, you're trying to make this a persuasion election. Coronavirus certainly helped Joe Biden in terms of making the case that Donald Trump is a disaster for the country because of the way that he has handled this crisis. But to a certain extent, it's become normalized, and certainly in areas where Donald Trump got most of his votes last time. They don't seem to have a problem with 170,000. Maybe they won't have a problem with 180,000, 190,000, 200,000 deaths, 250,000. And the problem now that you're seeing with stuff that's going on in Portland, Kenosha, and Donald Trump is heading to Kenosha tomorrow. My guess is he's going to get out there. He's going to read the police docket. He's going to head to Kenosha. He's going to read the police docket, or what is it? The arrest warrant, I should say, for Jacob Blake. And it's not pretty. And he's going to get out there and he's going to read this publicly. And he's going to put Joe Biden on the spot as to, like, who are you with here? And what Joe Biden would normally do, or what a candidate in this situation would do, is attempt to pivot to grounds where he is stronger, or she is stronger, depending on the candidate, obviously. But the problem is that Joe Biden has no agenda. It's possible you could go dig up on his website, but can anybody tell me what Joe Biden, certainly, you look at the DNC, they didn't push any type of policies. They pushed the fact that Joe Biden is a good guy. Well, you can't pivot off of a topic you don't want to deal with. Because, look, Joe Biden's got a job. Activists have a job. People in the streets have a different job than Joe Biden at this point. And for Joe Biden to do his job, which is beat Donald Trump, he's got to be able to pivot off of the question of violence in the streets. He's got to be able to pivot off of the protests to another topic where Donald Trump, at the very least, doesn't feel like he has some type of traction. But what would that be for Joe Biden? I'm a good guy. This is where you would come out and you would release maybe an economic plan. But they are so afraid of putting anything out there that has any real, I think I just lost my phone connection. They are so afraid of putting anything out there that would in any way cause people to be able to make Joe Biden's proposal something that you judge, right? The whole thing is they want this to be a referendum on Donald Trump. And so Joe Biden's entire strategy has been, I'm going to basically be nothing but a nice guy. I'm not going to be the guy who's pushing this policy or that policy. He has policies, obviously, but he's not pushing them. He's not running on that. He's not fully developed these things. And that's been their strategy. The problem is that doesn't work if there are other extraneous events that take place. Because some of those events may start to encroach in your sort of neutral zone. And so Joe Biden has to make a decision. Is he going to alienate people who are upset at the way that black people are policed and the issues they have to deal with in this country in terms of systemic racism, et cetera, et cetera. Is he going to alienate those protesters? Or is he going to allow Donald Trump to frame him as the guy who is going to bring about, a revolution in the streets? Joe Biden doesn't want to do either one of those things. And Joe Biden never contemplated having to do either one of those things because they contemplated this is just going to be a referendum on Donald Trump. And so what you would want to do if you're Joe Biden is to pivot off to another topic, but there is none. They have not laid the groundwork for these. Now, maybe he can start talking about the economy, but they have not built any type of foundation here. So this is just like Joe Biden could have 2 days ago said, I'm going to Kenosha and I'm going to try and calm things down because Donald Trump won't. But Donald Trump beat him to the punch. I think when we went on break, I said, I don't think we're going to hear anything from Joe Biden until after Labor Day. And they tried to do that. But events around them have overtaken them. And look, I still firmly believe that Martin O'Malley could have won in 2016. That's my way of saying that I think that Clinton had unique liabilities as a candidate. Liabilities of her own making and liabilities of not her own making. Liabilities that included being a woman. Liabilities that included, having 30 years of cottage industries built around her. Liabilities including Comey's letter. Liabilities including a campaign that was bad. I don't know what else you could call that. They didn't campaign in states that they thought they just had wrong information. They didn't generate enough enthusiasm, so they leaned largely on modeling. Maybe they decided supposedly to do that. Anyways, that modeling was a disaster. And Donald Trump barely won under that circumstance. Barely won. So theoretically, Joe Biden, because he doesn't have the baggage that Hillary Clinton had, because he has the advantage of hindsight, will not take any states supposedly for granted. And because he's a white man, supposedly shouldn't have these liabilities. But the difference is that Donald Trump, for whatever reason, has picked up support from black people and Latino people from last time. He also has the power of the federal government. So when it comes to like disenfranchising people, when it comes to creating these the turmoil in these streets, he has the ability to do that. He has the ability to send unmarked police, federales into Kenosha, pulling people inside unmarked vans. He has the ability to do that in Portland. Those are just provocations. That's all that they're there for. So that's where we're at. We're seeing a tightening, not a huge tightening, in the polls in some of the key swing states. We are seeing Donald Trump get a little bit of a bump from his convention. Biden did not. I don't know how relevant that is. Joyce from PA on the IM. Let me get this thing all the way up here. We'll take a couple of these, and then maybe we'll play one or two more clips and head into the fun half. I'm sorry about we got a late start today, folks. Tomorrow on the program, we have Rick Perlstein. Is that right?
That is correct.
Got a good week.
Reagan land.
Joyce from PA, you always preface any news regarding Russian election interference with a statement that some people overstated Russian influence on 2016. Who overplayed Russian influence and what did they say that was incorrect? I do not believe that there is anything definitive that the Russian involvement in our election was decisive. And I mean, certainly, I don't follow too much media, but certainly, MSNBC hyped it, that Russian interference in a way that I think was like, it's just simply not demonstrable what kind of impact they had. There's no doubt that they interfered in the election, but I can't sit here and say that involvement was why she lost, as opposed to not going to Michigan and Wisconsin, or as opposed to not sending out canvassers, as opposed to modeling, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, that's what I'm talking about there. Here's Joe Biden with a new ad showing empty stadiums. And again, this is Joe Biden attempting to basically lay low. See if there's anything even remotely controversial you can find in this ad.
Weather by opening day standard, we're going to be in the 60s. Enjoy the game. And now, to honor America, please join in the singing of our national anthem.
What? Let's get back in the game. That's the only thing. For those who are just listening, the only thing we saw was images of empty stadiums, empty beaches, empty schools, and a chyron that says Trump put America on the sidelines. Let's get back into the game. Well, I don't understand what the message is. Are we supposed to go back into school and go back into the sports stadiums? Or is it a more complicated metaphor here that I'm missing out? I mean, the only thing that's controversial about that ad, I mean, in other words, boy, coronavirus sucks. And who is that ad for? It's for people who apparently, I mean, look, coronavirus is real. The problem is that Donald Trump's response has been horrible. And you want to get back into the game safely. That's the point. And the point is Donald Trump has not made it safe. Yet, in much of the places that Donald Trump is running this campaign, they're out there doing this and they don't care. That's an ad that is geared towards Republicans. And that's all well and good if they are, if that's just extra cash they got lying around because they've mobilized everybody else. But I have some real questions about that. I'm concerned. I want Joe Biden to win because I want Donald Trump to lose. I want him not to be president anymore.
I might be reading into it too much, but do you think they're also sort of sending that message of like, we'll be global leaders again on the global game, the global stage? I know it's all very pastoral imagery, but I mean, that image was big in the DNC. I don't know.
Maybe. But I don't know. I mean, maybe that's consistent with like, we won't be a laughing stock anymore. But is the fact that we're a laughing stock, a very subtle play that like we'll be a world leader again. Is that enough to change people's minds? Like, that's the problem, is that they're fishing in waters where there are no fish. And you can afford to do that if you're convinced that this election's not about you. Like, you don't have to mobilize. Your people are already coming out there. But I'm not so convinced. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. But they have done everything they could to keep Joe Biden from allowing Donald Trump to attack Joe Biden. And that was working, right? I mean, 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were saying they can't find anything to get anything to stick onto Joe Biden. But then there are things that crop up in real life where Joe Biden has to essentially establish a position, and he has to define that position. He's allowing Donald Trump to define that position for him. He's got to establish a position that will not alienate the people who are sympathetic with what's going on with the streets, but at the same time won't screw up his strategy, which is to convince Donald Trump voters to vote for him. And that's the problem, is that you were banking on nothing like that coming up. And that's the danger of this. And look, the Republicans, it may not be fair. It may not be fair to say Joe Biden is responsible for what's going on the streets in these Democrat cities. It's not, obviously, it doesn't make any sense at all. Joe Biden's, in his basement. He's not in charge of any of this. But the bottom line is, it's sticking to him, and he has no way to pivot off. All right, let's take a quick break. Head into the fun half of the program. We'll take some phone calls. Sorry, today's all jumbled up. Like I said, we had some internet problems. And Matt had some internet problems, but we're all back now. Want to remind you, we got one of our coolest sponsors sponsoring the show today, Hunt-A-Killer. It's a murder mystery subscription box. It's one of the most unique games out there and brings the fun of an escape room, which you could not go to under any circumstances right now, as far as I'm concerned, to your home, which you can go to. Go to huntakiller.com/majority. Use promo code majority at checkout for 20% off your first box. That's huntakiller.com/majority. Promo code majority. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Oh, wait. Let's do some plugs. Folks, your support always welcome and needed on the show. Join themajorityreport.com. Check out the AM Quickie. A lot of people listen to it over the break. People are really loving it. Gives you all the headlines in a quick 6-7 minute every morning, and it's in your podcast feed very early these days. I don't know, 8 a.m. by 8 a.m. Also, check out Nomiki's show. She did a great job with the RNC and the DNC last week, or the RNC last week, the DNC the week before. You can find her show on youtube.com/The Nomiki Show or on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show. And she'll be with us tomorrow, as always. Jamie, how was your break?
Hey. My break was awesome. Thanks for asking. I went to Block Island for a couple days with some of my friends, and
Nice.
we realized some of us hadn't seen each other in about 6 months. since my birthday dinner, which I'm now kind of thinking of as the Last Supper because my birthday is March 9th.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. There you go. Yeah. And you guys were all wearing masks or what?
Oh, we all got our rapid COVID tests right before we went.
Nice.
So we had a clean bill of health. We even had the little documents that we could carry around on us in case the Rhode Island police decided to hassle us. But they don't really seem to care that much in Rhode Island.
Nope. No. In fact, Rhode Island's having a problem now. I think like Rhode Island is one of the things, like you can go to Massachusetts from New York, but any other state, I think besides Connecticut or Maine or New Hampshire, you got to do a quarantine. I got a test this morning, not the rapid test, the one where they stick it all the way up the nose.
Oh, it's not so bad.
Did you get the one all the way up your nose?
Yeah. I was expecting it to be worse.
Well, maybe you got the low key one. Did they hold it there for 10 seconds?
I don't know.
I don't think you got that.
Maybe a little less than that, but
no.
There's some places that do the rapid one in New York City now. So
yeah, I know.
Yeah, I got one of those, and I got to say the mental well-being of having a test and knowing that you're negative is really undervalued, I would say.
I got to do it, because we get Saul going back to school, and Mile is not going to go back to school. Well, I guess Saul's also not going back to school. That's a mess. Matt, what's up? Oh, go ahead, Jamie. Go ahead. What's up?
I was just gonna say maybe this is for the fun half, but I had a dream about you guys last night.
Uh-oh. Wait a second.
Hey, what happened?
No, that wasn't the one.
That works.
Yeah, I guess that also. All right. Well, folks, better tune in. This could get a little disturbing. What else? What's happening on the Antifada, Jamie?
I'm so glad you asked. This week on the Antifada, or I should say last week, because we put it out over the break. I guess it wasn't really a break for the Antifada, but it was a break for me from work, which is why I recorded it before I left. We have a two-parter on the Black radical tradition and Black Marxism. And I think it's a really important topic, especially now when the right and the center are really trying to separate out radicalism and Marxism from the Black community, showing that this is actually a long tradition and that Black liberation and anti-capitalism go hand in hand. And in fact, I think Black liberation is the key to unwinding a lot of the bad stuff about capitalism, at least in this country. So we had on an activist and educator, great guy, Kazembe Balagoon, and we went through a whole bunch of Black radical thinkers from W.E.B. Du Bois to the Black Panther Party and Harry Haywood, C.L.R. James, and more. And then in the second part, we went over some Black Marxist feminists, including Claudia Jones and Angela Davis. We talked about Black feminism and prison abolition, which Angela Davis has done a lot of good work on. So that's out now. Patreon.com/The Antifada.
Matt.
Tomorrow night on TMBS, David, Leisha, and I will be talking to Malika Jabali. She's been in Kenosha. She was there during the shooting of Rittenhouse shooting, and we'll be talking to her about what she saw there and how we untangle this mess.
There you go. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back in the fun half. 646-257-3920.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost has what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Danergy's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danergy.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
Psych. Fuck 'em. Fuck 'em. Almost has what? Almost says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
and the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black. African and the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
I know.
Oh, sorry. We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report. It's the fun half. Ladies and gentlemen, today is Monday. Tomorrow is Tuesday. And
thanks, Rebecca Black.
Is that she the one who did that Friday song?
Yeah, she knows all the days of the weeks too.
There you go. I only know the first half of the week. I don't know the second half.
Well,
So
we'll bring her on sometime.
I can do that. I can do that on Monday, and I can say that on Tuesday. But after Wednesday, I get a little lost. But tomorrow is Tuesday. There is a primary in the state of Massachusetts. Just an update: the Democratic Party, or I should say, the student Democratic organizations that had banded together to write a letter to Alex Morse, who is running against Richie Neal in Massachusetts. I can't remember what district it is now.
First.
Is it the first?
Yep.
I guess they started from the west and went east. In the Massachusetts 1st District, they have since apologized and have said that they were essentially hoodwinked by the people who orchestrated this smear, and they apologized and wished Morris well. I hope he wins. Interviewed him a long time ago on Ring of Fire, and it may get reported out, but this show actually played a part in the reporting that revealed all the details about this smear. Maybe we'll talk about that in a day or two. I don't want to scoop anybody, but although it's us. But here is Nancy Pelosi saying one of the most disingenuous things in the world. Look, I have a problem with Richie Neal because he sits on the Ways and Means Committee and is the recipient of the most amount of corporate PACs, not just in the Democratic caucus, in the entire Congress.
Oof.
The entire Congress. And the other thing that is, I have a problem with Richie Neal is he has purposely dragged his feet on proper oversight of the Trump administration. He has had the ability for over a year to get the Trump taxes. And why is this important? Because, well, we know that Letitia James is already starting to bring civil charges against Trump Inc. because of lies on their tax returns. We also now know, because of reporting, that Rod Rosenstein quashed a counterintelligence investigation into the aspects of how Donald Trump made money and what his financial relationships were with Russia or Russian assets, essentially. And that was quashed. The FBI thought it was going to be handled by Mueller. Mueller thought that the DOJ was going to handle it, and nobody ended up investigating that. Richie Neal had the opportunity to do this. And now Nancy Pelosi's big pitch is, well, if you elect him again, maybe this time he'll do it. Here it is.
And in fact, when we win this election, and we have a new president of the United States in January, and we have a new Secretary of the Treasury, and Richie Neal asked for the president's returns, then the world will see what the president has been hiding all of this time.
You don't need Richie Neal to ask for those returns as she endorses him. You can just have whoever is the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. In this case, it'll be Lloyd Doggett if Morris wins. In fact, Richie Neal has proven that his reluctance to do so in the first place completely dragged his feet.
But no other Democrat wants to see Trump's tax returns, Sam.
Richie Neal is the right. You need to be, but the fact is that you need to be the chair of the Ways and Means Committee to get access to it. Only Richie Neal can do it, but he has to wait 3 years before he does it, because that's the special incantation that gets you the returns. Really just disingenuous.
Whatever happened to Pelosi promising if they took back the House that it'd be one of the first things they do? Yeah,
exactly.
Pelosi, this is on the Hill. Yeah, Trump tax returns, one of the first things we do if Dems win House. That was October 11th, 2018.
Well, she said one of.
Okay.
She said one of. So they're still getting to it. It may take 3 years. That was the fine print. You didn't see anything beyond that. It may fine print.
Well, she goes on to say, this is from an interview with the San Francisco Chronicle editorial board. It's one of the first things we do in the lower chamber. Quote, that's the easiest thing in the world. That's nothing, she said.
She was right about that. It was the easiest thing in the world, and they still managed not to do it.
Well, there were a lot of more important things to get to. And now that everybody has health care, they can get to the tax returns.
That's right. It literally was the only thing that the House could do unilaterally was that type of oversight. And they didn't do it. Meanwhile, in terms of the lowest of the low, so Adi Barkan, I think people are mostly familiar with him. He is he has become a very prominent single payer healthcare advocate in this country. He has ALS. It has really, over the past 3 or 4 years, you can see the toll it has taken on him. Years ago, he stopped, I think it was Ted Cruz, maybe, on a plane, or I'm not sure who it was, a senator, and told them that they could, support healthcare. He has now lost the ability to speak. He speaks with the use of a computer aid, that generates his voice. And that allows, it's almost impossible to even contemplate this. But apparently, Steve Scalise, the guy who once walked into a room and said, I'm like David Duke without all the baggage, cut a video. And I don't even I could sit down and if I spent an hour just contemplating, what could they do with that? it would never occur to me that they would actually redub his computer voice to say something different than he said. Here's Steve Scalise. So in other words, Addie Barkan was talking to Joe Biden. It's part of a campaign thing, talking through his computer generated voice, and was looking for defunding, or I should say redistribution of funds amongst cities and basically across the country, where we would put more money into things like health, put more money into things like mental health care, put more money into things like feeding people and housing people. And Scalise, it didn't work quite well enough for his scare ad, so they changed the audio. Now, of course, his lips aren't moving, so no one knew except for the people who had seen the original. Here's Scalise explaining why he posted that video.
Do we agree that we can redirect?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so you're taking some heat over the weekend from Twitter because you took the last part of that, but you added from earlier in the interview the police and put it right in there, and you were accused of manipulating a video. What do you have to say about that?
Well, look, it shouldn't have been edited, but at the same time, the comments were always about, in fact, twice in that interview, he asked Joe Biden if he was for redirecting money away from police. And in both times, Joe Biden said yes. And you saw that last response. Joe was excited about saying yes, that he would redirect money away from police. So, look, we sent out the video again, the full video, in fact, if anybody wants to see it with that full interview. But again, multiple times Joe Biden has asked if he supports redirecting money away from police. And Joe Biden says yes. Redirecting and defunding the police are the same thing. If you're a police officer and they're redirecting money away from you, doesn't matter where else it's going. It's going to make it harder for those police officers to do their job safely and to keep those communities safe. And so this is a serious issue in this campaign. And Joe Biden, for whatever reason, has taken that position that he's okay with redirecting money away from police. And look at what's going on in some of these cities. They need maybe stronger law enforcement presence. Surely they don't need a weaker law enforcement presence.
Oh, well, I'm satisfied with that. Thank you. I mean, what that is, just to let you folks know, that's like one of those things where I wouldn't be surprised if they intentionally did that to get another round to get people to pay attention to that video. It's the same thing where they put, John Ossoff's nose and they make it bigger and they get criticized for being anti-Semitic. But really what their message was is that John Ossoff is a Jew. And we just want to make sure that everybody knows that when he's running.
Well, it's hard with the crypto ones.
That's what but my point being that you will see this type of like controversy in ads. And Scalise, you just saw a perfect example of it. He barely addresses the fact that he literally changed what a person who, because of ALS, does not have the ability to speak, changed what they said, brushes that off, and then just goes right in and delivers basically the message of the day. And they're good at this, folks. They're good at this.
Well, if he didn't want them to edit his robot voice, he shouldn't have gotten ALS.
That is a good point. We shouldn't have edited it that way. I mean, it really is the lowest of the low. Mm-hmm. So low.
It's mind-blowing, really.
Isn't
so
it?
Awful. Yeah, no. We're going to take a guy with a computerized voice, use the same computerized voice that's from earlier in the video to make our heinous point that isn't even true.
As you know, there's a 17-year-old in custody in Kenosha who basically was been trained from a very young age by his mom, I think, to respond in the manner in which he did, which was, I've got to go and protect. I don't know who he thought he was protecting. He's not even from Kenosha. But this is an opportunity for me to engage in the fantasy, the 17-year-old fantasy mind that I have, where I can play, paramilitary like his mom apparently has taught him to do.
Hey.
Shot 3 people, killed 2. Here is Senator Ron Johnson, incapable, because of who his voters are, of condemning this guy. Clip number 10.
Ask you the question that I was going to ask you, sir. We saw 2 people killed by a Trump supporter in your home state of Wisconsin, in Kenosha last week. And these deaths do appear to be the result of clashes between the right and the left. So doesn't the president have a responsibility to call out violence regardless of who is committing it?
Yeah, and the governor has responsibility to accept the surge in manpower so that people, so that citizens don't believe they've got to protect their own property.
I'm asking about the president.
And
we can talk about
matters
the
in their own
next.
hands, because that's really what happened. No, what the president did was he offered to surge manpower resources so the violence could end. The governor did not accept that day. That night, tragically, 2 people lost their lives because citizens took matters in their own hand. I'm not for vigilantism. I'm not sure that's what was happening. People felt because the governor and local officials were looking for help. The governor did not accept the help, and so there was not the resolve to end the rioting. And so people took matters in their own hands, and that's what ended up happening. People die. You have to get control of the situation. And the way you do it is what happened in Milwaukee, in Kenosha, where local officials said, please, we want help. We want manpower. The president offered. The governor finally accepted it. And now at least the streets are not violent. We still have the protests. The businesses are still shuttered. Those individuals' constitutional rights are being violated because they can't operate their business and enjoy a living.
Senator, that
so again, you have to look at the entire situation.
The 17-year-old accused of committing those 2 murders was a Trump supporter.
It's a tragedy.
Do you condemn that?
It's a tragedy.
Do you condemn it?
It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy.
It's a tragedy,
the entire situation is a tragedy. Listen, I don't want to see any loss of life. It's a tragedy, and the way you prevent these tragedies is you support law enforcement.
Could be a
you
car
calm
accident.
the situation. You allow for peaceful protests, but you don't allow peaceful. You don't allow peaceful protests to turn siege into siege. Listen.
There you go. He will not condemn that. He will not condemn a guy who shot 3 people, killed 2 people. Incidentally, that 17-year-old, this is going to come as a shock to people. Not a business owner.
He's a business defender.
Yeah. He's not a business owner, and I don't know what businesses he was defending.
Well, according to an article by Matt Binder that I read today to kind of catch up on this, he was nowhere near the business he claimed to be defending when the shooting happened, when he shot those people.
Well, he's got to go out and preemptively protect the businesses, I guess, supposedly. I mean, this is what Donald Trump wants. They want to make this a big story. They want this to happen. If Donald Trump has his way, this will happen in every city across the country.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone should be surprised that it is happening in this way, and no one should be surprised that the cops seem to be on the side of the white militia groups, because there's a lot of overlap in between the cops and the white nationalist militia groups, and more reporting is coming out on that every day.
It's indicative of the pre-existing problem, which is that they perceive segments of the population as their enemy. And that's what allows them to take these types of actions. And I'm not talking specifically about any specific act. I'm not talking specifically about Jacob Blake. Just talking in general. This is the attitude that they have towards a huge portion of the population that they police in that way, as opposed to protect and serve.
And it's interesting that Ron Johnson uses the word tragedy to describe this, because what he says right after that is it's a tragedy that there weren't forces mobilized by Tony Evers to Kenosha so that these vigilantes didn't go out there and have to shoot people who they felt they were being attacked by.
Yeah, like it should have been cops shooting them with rubber bullets instead of this guy shooting them with real ones.
There's a passive quality to the tragedy thing, right? Like, I mean, this is like almost like a natural event on some level. And
it's just what happens.
I mean, you know, you can also, you can perceive these things as natural events and still condemn it. You can say it was absolutely obvious that 17-year-olds who have been trained with semi-automatic weapons for a moment like this, who are geared up, see the opportunity for them to play militiaman is going to happen. That was, you know, that's like, and to a certain extent, like, of course, you can't sell this many weapons in society. You can't create this type of divisiveness. You can't create these sort of fantasies in the minds of these people that they can be, you know, diehard John McClane, and they're constantly looking for any opportunity to be John McClane or whatever it is, and not expect this to happen. You couldn't say like there's something natural to this. I think that's the case with, you know, much of what we've seen in terms of violence on both sides. That this is a response to an environment that you set up. You can still condemn it.
Yeah. Yeah, we can condemn the wider structural forces that led to this violence at the same time that we can condemn this kid for killing people.
Yeah. And it can still be a tragedy. Calling from a 337 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Dominique from Baton Rouge. Long time, first time.
Dominique, thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
So I'm going to come in hot here. I wanted to talk about the moral bankruptcy of the executive government of Lafayette, Louisiana, a Republican-run city, I'm going to go ahead and say.
Okay.
So last week, the New York Times does an article about the city of Lafayette facing 3 concurrent crises. It's caught up in a COVID spike. There's damage from the Hurricane Laura that just came through, and it's also the site of an ongoing police violence protest. Today, the Washington Post reports that the government of Lafayette Parish is advising charity organizations and deciding upon themselves to decline offering shelter to evacuees and refugees from the destruction of Laura.
Unbelievable.
I describe it as it's the nadir of an abyss of incompetent cruelty that's part of them fighting against the protest of the police killing of Trayford Pellerin. The government's been advising groups that outside agitators would take advantage of the city's hospitality to come in and cause trouble in the community, protesting the police shooting that happened about the night before the Jacob Blake shooting happened. And this is just the capper of a Keystone-like scramble to try and stop these Trayford Pellerin protests. At the start of the weekend, the mayor issued a set of new COVID restrictions that were obviously meant to keep people from protesting. And these are orders that are coming from a mayor who, in the summer, refused to issue a mask mandate as cases spiked in the area, calling a mask mandate, and I'm not kidding on this, the equivalent of using a nuclear bomb to end a war.
Wow.
2 other cherries on top of this Sunday of comedic callousness. Saturday, the local shopping mall was shut down by police because the threat of an Antifa takeover of the Spencer's Gifts. We have a meme site that promotes fake Antifa rallies, and the police go and respond to this. But I kid you not, a takeover of the Spencer's Gift at the mall, shut down the mall. Then, also, a peaceful protester was arrested for blocking traffic by setting up a barbecue in front of the mayor's house, which the mayor went on to describe to the news as a traumatic experience for his wife and kids. So
we all know how rich white people feel about barbecues.
Absolutely.
It's a 911 incident
that occurred just pretty much over this wild weekend. These disingenuous COVID restrictions on gathering, this mall closure of fake Antifa gathering, this barbecue trauma, and now we're going to deny shelter to people who lost their home due to a hurricane. Sorry, people. You're not welcome in Lafayette, apparently, because you may be an agent of the radical left.
Appreciate the call.
Well,
nuts.
All right, Sam.
Thanks, man.
I mean, whoopee cushions can be a deadly weapon if they fall into the wrong hands. So they got us there.
Let's go to calling from a 256 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Jacob from Alabama.
Jacob from Alabama. Jacob, good to hear from you. Remind everybody, you started the Union Show, correct?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah, I was wanting to call and update everybody. You know, you wanted me to when I told you all about it, you wanted me to call in and update, let you know how it's been going, and we've been on the air for about 4 months now, and so we've done a lot of interviews, talked to a bunch of callers, had a bunch of segments. It's been a lot of fun. So I wanted to chat, let you know what we've been doing.
Can people access it online too?
They can, absolutely. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, all at The Valley Labor Report.
Say, what is it called again? The Valley?
Yes, The Valley Labor Report. We broadcast out of Huntsville, which is in the Tennessee Valley. So we kind of ripped on that for the name.
Good. All right. So give us an update.
Yeah, so like I said, we've been on the air for about 4 months, and I wanted to talk about some of just a couple of the shows that we did that have been my favorite. We talked to a researcher from the University of Washington about a study that they did showing that union membership decreases racial resentment among members. We had an all call-in show where we actually had a couple of callers who we had no idea, like these aren't people that we knew, but they were union retirees calling in to like tell us about stories, how their unions had won for workers in Alabama. And then another called in to like cry about being called mean names by union members when he crossed their picket line.
That can always be
so
hard.
that was fun. But my favorite interview has been with two union nurses from the Pennsylvania Association of Staff Nurses and Allied Professionals, because it really gets at the heart at what we're trying to do with the show. You know, you mentioned that this is a union talk radio show. Both of us are enmeshed in the labor movement, and we wanted to kind of center that in the show because there's so much misinformation and just a lack of information about unions and the labor movement in Alabama. People don't know anything about it, or they think that you have to be a real left-leaning person to be in a union, or that all unions are corrupt and everything. And so this interview that we did with the two nurses from PASNAP, one of them described himself as a Christian constitutionalist conservative, and the other says he's like an ultra liberal, but both of them are the biggest union supporters that you're going to find. And that really, it was really amazing hearing them talk, hearing how much respect and love and solidarity they had for one another and their fellow workers. And you can tell from the way that the conservative one talked, you can tell how true that first interview that I mentioned with the researcher that talked about how racial resentment decreases as a result of union membership, and that's because of the intimate interactions that union members are forced to have with each other. Really, the conservative person actually said, I never realized that liberals or these other folks were so human before. And you can tell that he's going through kind of a political awakening, so to speak. And that interview really cut to what we hope to do is show people what unions can do for workers in Alabama and in the rest of the country, and it was really a really educational experience for myself and for the audience as well, I believe.
Great.
I really enjoyed being able to do it.
People can find it on YouTube as well.
Yes.
And what is it again? Give the address again for it.
The Valley Labor Report.
The Valley Labor Report.
YouTube.com/The Valley Labor Report.
Great. All right. Well, Jacob, thanks for the call, and you're doing good on that accent, and it almost sounds like completely real. That must be helpful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, there are no real leftists in Alabama, so. I'm actually somebody who grew up in New York, coming down and trying to infiltrate.
Yeah, you've done a really good job
infiltrate
You've done a good job of passing it off. Appreciate the call, Jacob.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sam.
Right.
Him and the Trillbillies. Those accents are on point.
There you go. Calling from a 360 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Dan from Seattle.
Dan from Seattle. What's on your mind?
Okay, so I have an election prediction, and I can't take credit for this. A friend of mine shared this with me. So what's going to happen is Joe Biden's going to win, and everybody's saying that, like, oh, Trump is a strong man. Like, we're going to need to go in there with the military and get him. But, like, sorry, I'm a little nervous. Bear with me. Okay. But, like, that's not going to happen because we know that Trump is a little bitty baby boy. So he's going to run away. He's going to flee. And he's going to go to Putin. And he's going to run to Putin, and he's going to put his head in Putin's lap. And he's going to cry. He's going to say, nobody knows how unfairly I've been treated.
It's like fanfic. It's like fan fiction.
No, this is an election prediction.
Well, that's not really an election prediction. I mean, that's like sort of more of like a prediction of how he's going to react to the election. I mean, I don't. First of all, I don't think that Putin would, at that point, even within the logic of what you're talking about, would have him in. Like, what's the point? He doesn't need a.
You didn't let me finish the story.
Oh, sorry.
So he's going to look up. He's going to look up at Putin, and Putin's going to look down at him, and he's going to say, "My son, you have failed me."
Oh.
And then he's going to stay in the hotel room next to Edward Snowden, and they're going to have continental breakfast together.
All right.
I would like to see that.
I mean,
bold prediction.
That is a bold prediction. That's very specific.
I'll have to check 538.
But we'll see. I'm not even sure we would know if that happens, but appreciate the phone call.
They'd make a reality show out of it,
All right. Fair enough. Appreciate it.
All right.
Bye.
Y'all take care.
Well, a little wonkery on our first day back.
Let's just, I want to just touch on this aspect of what came out about this story, Rod Rosenstein. Very early on in this whole thing, my speculation was that Donald Trump, and I think one or two times, probably when we do those shows where there's drinking involved, I have, talked about my completely speculative take on this whole involvement of the FBI, Donald Trump with Russia, whatnot. I think his relationship is probably not terribly different than some politicians have with major corporations, although I think Russia is willing to take their support a little further than some major corporations. I don't know if one is more relevant than the other in terms of winning elections. But my speculation was, and largely informed by conversations I had with the late Wayne Barrett, where he would say it was all about Felix Sater, that Felix Sater is a CIA and FBI asset. He was basically, as far as I can tell, laundering money for Russian oligarchs and probably other people in Europe. He supposedly gave the CIA Osama bin Laden's phone number, supposedly. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what he claimed. And I haven't seen any refutation of it. I don't know that you would. But certainly Loretta Lynch, when she was with the DOJ, wrote an affidavit on his behalf in a sentencing trial, which is not normally what you see heads of USA offices doing on behalf of people who stab someone in the face with a champagne flute. And we now have this report that Rod Rosenstein, when he was acting director of, or acting attorney general, maybe he was deputy attorney general at the time, but I think he was acting as well, quashed the counterintelligence investigation that the FBI was starting to do about Donald Trump. This is distinct from the criminal investigation. Counterintelligence doesn't have the same evidentiary requirements because they're not going to bring charges in that regard. They're just trying to establish, do we have a national security risk? Based upon the relationship that this individual, in this case, it was the President of the United States, has with a foreign entity. Not that he is this is not like a Manchurian candidate situation. It's just Donald Trump is Donald Trump, and it's quite clear, I think, cares about Donald Trump and does not care if he thinks he can make a buck he doesn't have any policy set. He doesn't have any, he didn't become president because he's like, I really want to do X or Y. He just goes by what he thinks is going to get him elected. I don't even think originally he wanted to get elected. He just wanted to build his brand. And so there's no reason to believe that he wouldn't operate in that same way in regards to Russia or any other country for that matter, or any other business. And Rod Rosenstein shut down, according to a New York Times piece that is part of, I guess, it's a Michael Schmidt's book that's soon to come out. Rod Rosenstein shut down the counterintelligence investigation with the FBI. The FBI at the time thought that this portion of the investigation would go to Robert Mueller, along with the criminal investigation that Robert Mueller was doing. The FBI was not informed that Mueller was limited to just the criminal investigation and not to be looking at the counterintelligence investigation charges at all. So no one, short of the Senate Intel Committee, has done any type of investigation from a counterintelligence perspective. And that's why, the Senate Intelligence Committee certainly went further than the Mueller report, found that, in fact, Donald Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, had an ongoing relationship with, not only with someone who was a spy for the Russian government, but someone that he knew was a Russian spy for the Russian government, because they found documents where he excluded this guy from certain situations and conversations because he knew where that information would end up. And so I am quite convinced that the reason why they were able to shut this down is because there are elements. No even agency, I think, is a monolith. I think there are elements in the FBI, and you can go back to October of 2016 when there was reports of a mutiny in the New York FBI office, that the FBI was involved at the very least in a way that is unreported with Felix Sater, and that Donald Trump was one end of what Felix Sater was doing. And I would imagine that there maybe have been protection because this was, from their perspective, an operation that was providing them intel. I don't think we'll ever know whether or not that theory is completely half-baked. But there's a lot of, it's very weird. Felix Sater just walking around, quite clear that the guy was involved in money laundering, and he would launder that money through the Trump organization. But I don't know that we'll ever know. Completely distinct question in my mind from whether Russia was the reason that Donald Trump became president. I think it's certainly relevant, though, in terms of some of his actions during it. This is a little bit disturbing. This is New York Times media reporter Kevin Roose. And he has some interesting facts on what is going on with Facebook. You know, we talk about the alternate media, I guess, universes that people have. On Facebook, the right is doing very well. Here he is on CNN. Let's play this clip.
Well, what have you found, Kevin, on Facebook recently?
Well, I've been looking closely at Facebook data for the past several years, and in the past few months, it's amazing how dominant the Facebook sort of right wing has become, the pro-Trump part of Facebook. And I pulled a bunch of numbers on this that are in a column I wrote this week about what if Facebook is the silent majority that Trump has been talking about. And it's amazing how little we, the people who sort of work in the mainstream media, don't understand about what's going on Facebook. It's a completely parallel universe in which, you know, the Trump's response to COVID-19 has been fast and effective, in which these riots in Portland and other cities are the biggest news story in the world, in which these sort of culture war controversies become much bigger than anything that happened at the RNC or the DNC, frankly. I just think we have very little sense of what's happening there. And so I wanted to dive in and investigate it. And I was kind of shocked by what I found.
Just to give you a sense of some of the stuff he found, in August, Facebook interactions, CNN had 21 million interactions. This isn't the same necessarily as views and whatnot, but it is a metric. August Facebook interactions, CNN had 21 million. The New York Times had 8 million. Ben Shapiro had 55 million. The August Facebook video views, CNN had 73 million. New York Times had 12 million. The Hodge twins had 84 million. Matt, do you know who the Hodge twins are?
No, I don't.
I was going to say, I don't even know who that is.
I mean, that's amazing, though, isn't it? You've got these right wingers out there. We don't even know who they are, and they've got 84 million. They're getting 11 million more views than CNN.
And maybe Matt Binder knows.
I bet you he does. The August Facebook shares, CNN, 2.2 million. New York Times, not even a million, 800,000. Dan Bongino, the guy famous for, what did he do? He didn't, that Vic Berger depiction of him pretending that he drank his own urine. Dan Bongino, 5.6 million views. Now, I would bet you anything that this is a function of, manipulating the system, that they are willing to spend a tremendous amount of money in advertising, burn that money, loss leader in their mind, as a way of driving those numbers. We have nothing equivalent on the left to anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, part of how Facebook is killing the media business is by the media became very dependent on Facebook for a majority of its traffic. And then Facebook had the power to take that traffic away and then ransom it back to them for a price.
Yep.
And obviously that favors the outlets with more money.
There was this Wired article.
And we should say not even outlets with more money. Outlets that have money that they don't have to recoup because they are financed with an ideology, and their metric of success is not how profitable it is. Their metric of success is how far the reach is. And that's certainly a leg up.
There was this story I like to remind people about, 15 months of fresh hell inside Facebook on Wired. And there's this paragraph here. Some of the company's most senior execs, notably Chris Cox, agreed that Facebook needed to give serious publishers a leg up. Other publishers, especially Joel Kaplan, a former deputy chief of staff to George W. Bush, who is now Facebook's vice president of global public policy, supporting high-quality outlets would inevitably make it look like the platform was supporting liberals, which could lead to trouble in Washington, a town mainly run by conservatives. Breitbart and the Daily Caller, Kaplan argued, deserved protections too. At the end of the climactic meeting on July 9th, Zuckerberg sided with Kaplan and announced that he was tabling the discussion about adding ways to boost publishers, effectively killing the plan. The one person involved in the meeting, it seemed like a sign of shifting power. There you go. Kaplan wasn't he on Kavanaugh's team?
Yes. I think he was. I mean, that's the point, is that you have a massive, just in the same way that Amazon wants not just to be a market, but be the market, Facebook also wants to be the market in terms of information. And they don't care what goes through there other than they don't care what information pulses through there, as long as there's information and they are uninhibited from monetizing it. So it just so happens the right is in power, then it is the right that they will kowtow to. And that's what we've got. And then you have, let's play this clip. This is Ben Shapiro, who had the highest number of impressions, significantly larger than CNN, significantly larger than the New York Times.
I bet it's all boomers too.
Who it very well could be. I mean, I don't know. Facebook, I don't know. I mean, Facebook is, I would imagine, that's who, that's the primary. It's certainly not, 15-year-olds, but I don't know if it's all boomers. I don't know. But regardless, if if boomers are still getting, Ben Shapiro's getting 55, Facebook interactions, CNN and the New York Times don't even have 30 million between the two of them, then that's a problem. Here's Ben Shapiro. This is an example of some of the stuff that that people are considering news on Facebook.
We do have to ask the question here, why is this happening? And the answer as to why this is happening is because Governor Tony Evers, who's a horrible governor, decided he was not going to call in the National Guard sufficient to quash the rioting and the looting and the violence. Because in the view of so many Democratic mayors and governors of cities, they've decided that it's worthwhile to give people space to let things burn, in the famous words of the former Baltimore mayor during the Baltimore riots in 2014, 2015. Remember, the mayor of Baltimore said we needed to give them space to burn. Okay, this has been the perspective for many Democrats. In the city of Los Angeles, where I live, Eric Garcetti shut down the entire city for a week running at 7 p.m. to give people space to loot and burn. If you don't want this to happen, there's a very easy way to stop it, and that is you call in the National Guard and you stop it dead. You stop it cold. When that doesn't happen, you know what happens? People start to defend other people's property. People start to move in, and they start to confront people who are committing acts of violence and looting. In fact, the single best example of how violence in communities rises when you remove
this idea that other people come in to protect other people's property. Is that what's really going on here? There's no ideological basis for these other people to come in. They're just coming in because they're good neighbors and they just happen to have their AR-15. I'm going to go in and I'm going to protect this mom and pop store I've never even been in. No, that's not what's happening.
No, they're totally horny to kill some leftists.
Exactly.
And people of color.
This is an ideological fight. Not one of those people show up. I mean, where were those same people when armed militia went and stormed their state house? Why weren't they protecting people when the National Guard wasn't mobilized? Of course not. That's absurd. But this is the story they're going to tell. And this is the story that Ben Shapiro is spreading. I don't know if it's to boomers or to whomever on Facebook, but this is the way they interpret these events. Continue.
And looting. In fact, the single best example of how violence in communities rises, when you remove law enforcement. That's what's been happening in these high crime areas. A lot of people ask, why is there this great differential in murder rates in between blacks and blacks and between whites and whites, for example? The murder rate in the black community is about 9 times higher, somewhere between 7 and 9 times higher than in the white community has been for generations at this point. Why is that? Well, the original reason, Thomas Sowell points out, is because white communities basically said to black communities, you're on your own. We're not going to give you police resources. And thus, what you ended up with is what you have everywhere, where there is no centralized authority that ensures law and order and support for property rights. What you end up with is people gathering to defend themselves and defend their properties and property of their friends against other human beings. Where the mob rules, chaos reigns, as I pointed out yesterday. Well, the mob ruled in Wisconsin, and chaos reigns in Wisconsin. And so it is a perfectly predictable response that you're going to get people who, in vigilante fashion, decide that they're going to go out and protect the private property of other people. Now, should they be doing that without training? No. Should a 17-year-old be out there? No. That does not mean that the person who committed the shooting was a quote-unquote white supremacist. Okay, that was the rumor that started floating around yesterday. There's not one iota of evidence that Kyle Rittenhouse is a white supremacist at this point.
Pause it for 1 second. Pause it for 1 second.
Iota,
are we to believe, and I guess that's the end of it, are we to believe that this guy has been training with guns for years for the opportunity to protect a business that he has no idea what they are? That's what he's been doing all these years. There's no ideology. There's no ideology involved in this. It's all just about, hey, look, Pa, they're coming in for the AP, grocery store, and I got to get out there. I'm going to grab my AR-15. Come on, Lassie, let's go and save the general store. No, that's absurd. That's absurd. There isn't a single individual who goes out there with a gun whose primary directive, primary incentive is to protect other people's businesses. Give me an effing break. You could have a whole list of things that they're doing. They want to fight the leftists. They want to fight the black people. They want to dress up like they're, Rambo. They want to shoot their guns at other people and feel like it's validated, on and on and on. And the actual desire to protect these strangers' businesses is somewhere down, like it's out of frame in terms of where on the list this is. Yeah. This is a joke. Just go out there. If you're going to defend this, if Ben Shapiro is going to defend this, you just say, like, look, this is a race war, and the white guys are going to get out there with their guns, and they're going to fight anybody who has a problem with this, and that's that. And that's inevitable to happen. I mean, to some extent, there is a certain inevitability because guys like Ben Shapiro have been priming their audience for years. Just go back to the shooter he inspired up in Canada, who shot up, I think he thought that he was shooting Muslims. I mean, Ben Shapiro has been trafficking in this stuff for ages. And he has, he's playing this game where it's like, oh, I'm just an observer. I'm not promoting this notion that Western civilization is under threat.
Yeah, the Alexander Bissonnette of the Quebec City mosque shooting. Yeah, go look at, I think Vic Berger did a helpful edit of that.
Yes. And so, I mean, the idea that this is about, it's inevitable that people are going to come out and protect property when the governor's, no. Where's the reports of a store owner shooting somebody? In that instance, that to me is maybe inevitable. I'm not saying it's good, but the idea that it's inevitable that a 17-year-old has been trained in paramilitary stuff is going to go out there, just been waiting for property in Kenosha to be under threat. Are you serious?
Yeah. I do think that private property plays a role at the base of all of this stuff and all of these problems. But by the time it makes its way to the brain of somebody like Rittenhouse, the shooter, it has been transmogrified and mystified via many layers of culture war stuff that it is not the primary driver anymore. I would posit. I do think it plays a role in terms of the purpose that the police serve in upholding, private property, white supremacy, capitalism, and all that shit that I'm always saying is connected.
Right. Well, there's no doubt that the government and the police by extension are there to protect property rights.
Yeah.
There's
and
no doubt about it.
He's on the side of the police, and the police are on his side too.
Oh, well, that's true. But I think from their perspective, it's cultural, right? Like, I mean, I think from their perspective, it's completely cultural. They don't care about the property rights. Neither one of them own that property. They don't care about it. They're not worried that the property rights system is about to fall. They want to take the opportunity to go into battle and have this sort of like just this like fig leaf of we're trying to maintain order. I mean, give me a break. I want to see what happens when you send in the National Guard and shut it down. What does that mean? You're going to start shooting people? I mean, it is, it's just a game. It's a game that they're playing. I'm sorry, 17-year-old is not sitting out there going, look, we have to maintain private property rights. And if the government isn't, I'm going to travel miles and miles to go and make sure that property rights is okay. I mean, is he at the courthouse too? Making sure, like, is he like vigilantly looking at like all civil actions? Like, is he going, oh, there's a copyright infringement case. I've got to stand guard and make sure that happens. Give me a break.
No, I do not think that he knows what he's doing in the wide angle. I don't think he's like, well, I uphold white supremacy, but also capitalism. Therefore, I'm defending private property.
Yeah, my guess is his defense of private property. And I will say this too, Thomas Sowell, the idea that yes, it is the case that the actual solving of crimes in areas of with high concentration of African American neighborhoods is incredibly disproportionately, like they fail. A lot of crimes go unsolved. The idea that this is the origin story, that this is what leads to crime in some neighborhoods where a lot of people are living in poverty is absurd. Mm-hmm. It's absurd.
Yeah. There's some good damning stats in the Alex Vitale book as well. Like the cops almost never stop a crime in progress. And they have been historically very dismissive of victims of crimes if they are not straight white men.
Well, the problem is they don't solve any crimes. It's never a matter of stopping one in progress. They don't solve them in these neighborhoods.
Yeah, the clearance rate for stuff like murder is very low.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 203 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Adam from Oregon.
Adam from Oregon. What's on your mind?
Is my mic okay? I'm on headphones.
You sound good.
Great. So Portland is a big fucking mess. It's mostly getting reported as the president encouraging all sorts of stuff. And the perspective really needs to be out there that we have a Democratic mayor who has been enabling this. He is also our police commissioner, which is a really weird setup. But we have a city commissioner system where they each kind of get to take assignments, and he gave himself that assignment. And so he has this double role and has essentially taken a hands-off approach. He has admitted, he doesn't think he's admitting, he thinks he's getting insight, that he pays very close attention, and the way he does it is by listening to the police scanner. So we regularly see the police perform theatrics, mostly for him. We saw, they have fire extinguishers and everything. They let a very small fire burn in the middle of the street so that they can call out the fire department on the scanner. Fire truck comes out and it puts out less than a trash can fire, just to make the point. Meanwhile, they're engaging in full rushes of peaceful protesters, screaming, batons out, beating people they already have on the ground.
Is that a baby?
Yes, sir. She's one of, I got twins, and they're 9 months old. And I blame you because you made this sound like an incredibly romantic idea.
You did not listen carefully.
I was going to say.
Oh, geez.
Well, I mean, it does sound like it's, the mayor is being highly performative. He certainly, and I think your daughter agrees, that
you remember the tear gas, right? When he stood in front of the tear gas,
right
in front of every night they use tear gas, his police, every night on people who are just kind of standing there, and he supports it every single time. Never has had anything to say except, yeah, I kind of reviewed that. And meanwhile, he stands with the police chief who says, this is depleting our resources, but it's what we have to do, and therefore we're not going to have the resources. Not just this was a one weekend mistake. This happens regularly where well-planned fascist marches come through town. We know about it months in advance. Everyone's talking about it, and they just happen not to have the resources. And these people beat and mace and attack innocent Portlanders. And people tend to say, you guys, you don't want to appear violent. It was so much easier in Charlottesville. People have to get out there, because when they don't, these people actually do walk the streets and just attack random people. They are normal fascist thugs. They allow people who are currently on probation for beating people at a cider pub, just walking up to the cider pub after one of their rallies and beating people up. They allow these people currently to go to marches, even though they're theoretically by a court not allowed to. So people have to show up. So when you hear this kind of nonsense of guys just try to be peaceful, you don't want to muddle the narrative, and Joe is out there saying both left and right violence. These are people protecting their cities against outsiders. The people who organize these marches are from Washington, they're from Idaho. One of the leaders the other day was saying, you guys got to vote in person, even though we don't have that here in Oregon. So I just need people to know that our Democratic mayor is leaving us open to this. He's doing this to us. And anyone who's from the area here, we're campaigning against him for a runoff that's happening in November against someone who at least has pledged that she wants to defund the police.
Appreciate the call.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks. I like those babies starting early. Oh.
Yeah. I was going to say, if I have kids, it's going to be in spite of all the stuff you've told me about it.
I was going to say, I feel like maybe I'm not doing my job properly if I've communicated, if I've somehow made that sound romantic. Here is Charlie Kirk, who's been doing his best. I think he's sort of like he's drafting behind Tucker Carlson's wake a little bit, because it's working so well for Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, he's like the smaller fish that like eats the bugs off of the big fish or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. He's also moving past his window of being an ambassador to young people just by his age,
Yeah, now he's got to sort of transition into the what is he, like a millennial? Is he a millennial?
Yeah, I think so.
We don't want him, but yes.
Here he is, weighing in again with this notion. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know what constitutes a decent person. I don't know this 17-year-old kid who seemed to be, this isn't a question of like, oh, I shot somebody by mistake. Oh my God, I've learned my lesson. I better go home now. He shot multiple people. He killed two. But it wasn't all at one point. It was boom, and then, some time expires, he does it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he was not calling 911. He was calling a friend to tell him about it.
And I don't know if that's what constitutes a decent person. I don't know what does, but if decent person includes someone who's going to shoot multiple people in a night under any circumstance, then I don't know that the word decent has any connotation. I don't know what it could possibly mean. Like the parameters for being decent are awful wide, but they're going to continue to hammer this. This is just hardworking folks grabbing whatever they find around the house to go help out, their neighbor's store. Here is Charlie Kirk trying to play that game.
But then last night, Kyle Rittenhouse, who was the young man who fired his weapon last night and killed two people. So the police don't do their job because they're outmanned. National Guard, because of Governor Evers, who's a Marxist who's running the state of Wisconsin, refuses the help from President Trump. So what happens? The terrorists take over. BLM Incorporated take over. And what do you expect is going to happen? Bad people from all across the country just decent, reasonable people are going to rise up. Kyle Rittenhouse was being chased through the streets by these thugs. He had an AR-15, from what I could tell by the video. I'm not justifying what he did, by the way. I'm not. But you have to understand the story.
I'm just saying he's
chased
decent.
Through the streets. They smack him with a skateboard. Trips and falls. Fires his gun several times. Heard elsewhere. And Kyle Rittenhouse has been indicted for first-degree murder. Now, according to the witnesses and the video footage, police apparently led the young man, Kyle Rittenhouse, responsible for some or all of the shootings, walked past him with the rifle of his shoulder as a member of the crowd, were yelling at him. I'm not advocating for vigilante justice. I'm not. It matters if you're watching this, I'm not advocating for vigilante justice. I'm asking, how do you get to vigilante justice? How do you get to something bad? You get to something bad when the police are not welcome in your city, when the National Guard is not welcome in your city, and you allow BLM Incorporated to run Kenosha, Wisconsin, a small, sleepy town on Lake Michigan in southeast Wisconsin. The sheriff told the Journal Sentinel that armed people have been patrolling the city streets in recent nights. I wonder why. Maybe because you're not doing your job.
All right. First off, what was this? Was the first night of protests at Kenosha? I mean, like, his tolerance level was one night. I mean, you know, because here's the game they're playing. He's saying, I'm not advocating this, and I'm not supporting it. I'm just sitting here and giving you analysis. I'm just here. I'm not saying that 2 + 2 = 4 is good or bad. I'm just explaining to you that 2 + 2 = 4, except for one of those twos is a lie. This is not hardworking, decent people grabbing their nearest AR-15 and hitting the streets to protect their buddies.
Yeah.
These are people who have been training with these weapons for years, waiting for an opportunity to justify using them on Black people, on white people who are protesting in favor of Black people, on leftists, on whomever. This is not, and if those are decent people, if that's the definition of decent people, I want to know what sits outside that definition. Mm-hmm. This is the game that they're playing.
Well, it's funny how they act so scandalized when people say act unsurprised when rioting happens after like unaccountable police violence. But then when they naturalize just murder in response to that, you know, it's just I'm just being objective here.
Right. Yeah. I'm just telling you what happens after you plant a seed and the tree grows, and it's just because of the water in the sun, as opposed to the ideology that is behind these gun nuts.
Yeah, it's a bit of a double standard, I would say. Also, he lies throughout that little clip we just played. Clearly, the cops were present enough in Kenosha to shoot a man 7 times in the back in front of his kids who was trying to walk away from them. And the other lie I caught was the specific story about the shooter, right? They're trying to pretend like it started when he got smacked with a skateboard by some of these leftist protesters or whatever. No, he had already shot one person when this happened. He was an active shooter and people were going after him and trying to disarm him. And that's when the skateboard thing happened.
Yeah, and earlier, like the Daily Caller video, it's still up there. People are tell the Daily Caller reporter, like, that guy came up to me menacing me saying, get out of the car, pointing his, and then another reporter, there's a great, I think it's USA Today, I should find it though, a great rundown of the actual timeline. And people were saying he was acting, that the sort of medical bag was sort of a fig leaf for what his real sort of intimidation tactics were there. That's a few people on the scene said that.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 478 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam. This is Jeff from Georgia.
Jeff from Georgia. How are you, Jeff?
You know, I've got my health at least.
That's good.
I'll take that. I don't know. Nobody's doing great, I guess, but I'm hanging in there. I wanted to welcome you guys back. I had no idea we were allowed to call in with our recurring dreams about Majority Report.
Oh yeah, wait, we didn't get that yet from Jamie.
Is this a thing that you wanted? I mean, I'd be pleased to hear Jamie's. I have my own.
Well, let's hear yours, and then Amy can tell. I mean, Jamie can tell hers.
It's really more of a nightmare. Obviously,
right.
I'm not even making this up. This is real. I dream that I go to New York, some sort of like vague feeling that I'm going to get a job maybe or impress you in some way. And for listeners to the program will realize how horrifying this is. Every time in the dream I go there, you treat me exactly like you treat H. John Benjamin. Like I just can't like no matter what I say, I'm just trying so hard and I'm just bombing and you're like looking away. Yeah, whatever. And I wake up like with this feeling of just dread. It must feel terrible to be H. John Benjamin. I feel bad for that guy.
Well,
like, really bad.
Jeff, I mean, I have respect for you, so that would never happen.
Oh, thank you. You just made my day. I want to hear Jamie's though. I really do. Like real bad.
All right.
Not creepily bad. Not like too much, but just like a little bit.
All right. Well, I'll let you go, and then we can hear Jamie's.
I appreciate it. You
All right.
guys have a good one.
You too.
And a great week to you. Bye-bye.
Jamie?
All right. So I was coming to the end of my vacation, right? My friends are like, oh, are you excited to get back to work at the Majority Report? And I was like, vacation's clearly better. I could stay on Block Island for like...
I'm totally in favor of extended vacations, believe me.
Yeah, I could stay on Block Island for much longer. And then right before I went to bed last night, I saw that photo, that cute art that the Letter Hack made of us, where we're like the Seinfeld characters. Did you see that?
Yes, I did see that.
And like when Elaine comes back from a trip and they're like, yay. So maybe that influenced it a little bit, but I had one of those really long, confusing dreams where you're like wandering around Europe, but it's like bizarro Europe and you're not even sure what country you're in. And I swam to Dublin at one point in time and visited my college friend there. But then I was like trying to get home, right? I went to the Dublin airport and I have this reoccurring dream where I'm like trying to get home or trying to get on a plane and the airport's really confusing. And I don't even know if I have a ticket. I like pretty much never make the flight in those dreams. But then I ran into you guys there. And I realized that it had been a work trip of some kind all along. And Sam, you bought me a plane ticket and I managed to get on the plane. And I think that might have been the only time I've ever managed to catch a flight in a dream.
Well, there you go. I mean it was my pleasure.
You don't get me wrong. You were kind of a dick about it.
Well, I mean, you were late. We were waiting at the airport for you for a long time, for days. And you were wandering around Dublin, and we were all like, we got to get back. Well, we got to wait for Jamie because she's wandering around Dublin, probably doesn't even remember that we were here on a work trip.
Yeah, fair enough.
Specifically,
somebody should maybe text her.
Matt was just like, let's just go. And I'm like, Matt, we got to wait. We got to wait.
Well,
so,
I appreciate it.
I was doing the Ulysses walking tour for the 4th time.
Nice.
Meanwhile, Brett, what were you doing, Brendan?
I was admiring the Phil Lynott statue from Thin Lizzy.
Wow, Jesus. Somebody's been there before. I haven't been there. All right, let's go to the IMs. Let's see. Colin from Nebraska. Do you think Trump could nominate 3 more Supreme Court justices if he wins another 4 years? RBG, Breyer, and Thomas. I think that's likely. I think it's likely. I mean, it's conceivable that I mean, RBG and Breyer, I believe, would hold on until literally they pass away. But I mean, they're going to be in their 90s. I think. I think both of them, and Thomas, I think would retire if Trump had another. He may. I mean, he would retire during Trump's, I think, administration. One board editor made a new fun break video for you guys with the DJ Danarchy song. Sent it to majorityreporters@gmail.com. Hope you guys like it. Oh, look at that. One board editor. All right, great. Gregory, Israel interferes with our elections to a much greater extent than Russia ever could. APAC, China does the same. Sorry for the disjointed message stuff. It's wild at work today. Zach from Florida. Joe could say no charge is a death sentence. Disco Stu, are we really prepared to say running on plans is actually something that works? Didn't work for Hillary. Trump didn't run on plans besides a wall Mexico was going to pay for. And the plans candidate couldn't win her own state in the Democratic primary. I don't think that it's a question of planned. And first of all, I don't think Hillary ran on plans at all. But you can run on policy.
I think the IM's referring to Warren.
Well, no, but he said didn't work for Hillary.
Oh, right. And then the primary
Trump didn't run on plans besides a wall Mexico was going to pay for. Well, I mean, that's a plan. I'm not saying it has to be sophisticated and worked out, but you have to have some theme to your campaign that is other than I'm not so offensive that you can't vote against Trump. That's what the Biden campaign is. Now, it may work because, like I say, Martin O'Malley would have won, in my opinion. I think any white guy you put in that position theoretically could have beaten Donald Trump at that time. I'm not convinced that, frankly, any white woman outside of Hillary Clinton lost by this much. And there is literally a half a dozen reasons that contributed to that. They all accounted for some, 1,000 here, 1,000 there. Yeah. But the problem is not just a question of like what run on. There is no way from Joe Biden to pivot out of a situation he doesn't want to be in because he has basically said, I'm just going to make this completely a referendum on Donald Trump. And it could work. I hope it does. But I think your assessment of like planned candidates don't win, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying there should be a very narrow, but Bernie Sanders did better than Elizabeth Warren because he was talking about basically just a broader theme. Joe Biden's theme was, I'm going to beat Donald Trump, period. That's what you're going to get from me. Nothing else. And
yeah,
it worked in the primary. I hope it works in the general.
Yeah.
It's a
I
different
feel
terrain.
like you can have a general plan without having to get into the weeds of the specifics of the policy.
Exactly. I mean, he has a version of the Green New Deal, but he's not running on that.
Mm-mm.
It's on a sheet of paper somewhere.
Yeah. He's not running on it because they've already rolled it back from the crappy compromise that Biden had in his platform to begin with.
Well, that's part of the problem is that part of the problem is that what the primary does is it basically allows you to negotiate with your base. This is what I'm going to offer. And you lock them in to be supportive of that. And so that when you come out there, even if it's somewhat compromised for the general, it's been compromised in the primary. When you come out to the general, you don't have to pivot off it too much to sell it to a broader set of people or to just talk about it without upsetting your own people. Joe Biden doesn't have anything like that. All he had was, I'm going to beat Donald Trump. And
going to beat him up, Jack.
I mean, like I say, it may not be, their theory might be correct, which is we don't have to do anything. We just have to not be in the news and we'll win. That's what Biden's plan is.
Given what he brings to the table, it might be the best plan possible.
I think it is the best plan possible for him. But the problem is that assumes there will not be an issue that comes up that, despite the fact that he doesn't want to engage in it, won't involve Biden. And this one could be. Because certainly Trump is trying to make it that way. Mm-hmm. And if Joe Biden could get out there and say, Donald Trump is trying to distract you from, and he'll say coronavirus, but there should be other messages.
Yeah. He's trying to pin the socialists on Biden. I managed to catch that. They used a photo with some of my friends in it, actually, of the DSA at the RNC.
Yeah, I don't think that's been terribly successful, frankly.
I don't think so either, but it is amusing.
Yep. Chicken salad chick. Here in South Carolina, we're all about our traditional Southern heritage and values, such as finding many ways to work mayo into everything we eat. Anyways, have you seen these Democrats? Build Back Better? They're looking like one of those vulgar rap music videos with all those bees. Militant apathy. Sam, what do you think the attacks against Bernie would have looked like? The attacks against Bernie would have looked like that he is socialist. And I mean, the attacks would have been similar, but they would have had a little more resonance because some of that is true. But the difference is in terms of parrying the attacks, you call me socialist if making sure that people have health insurance is socialist, then so be it. If providing seniors more money for Social Security is socialist, then so be it. If allowing coal miners the opportunity to get out of the mines and get good paying jobs, maybe even better paying jobs, doing X, Y, or Z is socialist, then so be it. If defunding the police means we're going to allow social workers to go in and deal with people who are, dealing from mental illness as opposed to armed shooters, then so be it. If defunding the police means that when you, that you don't have your property confiscated because you're, accused of maybe being involved with drugs, so be it. I mean, there's a whole raft of ways, and it would be challenging, but on some level, there's at least there's arrows in that quiver for Bernie in those instances to respond.
Instead of just I was just gonna say this morning, Biden saying like, "I'm not against fracking. Come on, man!" Like that's all he can respond with.
Exactly, and the strategy for a Sanders candidacy would have been different insofar as like we're not trying to persuade people in the suburbs. We're trying to generate more votes in the cities. And so a completely different strategy. Well, I guess we'll find out. I mean, I still, if I had to bet, I would still say Joe Biden is going to win, but everybody's scared, but this is, I'm just pointing out like, one of the problems with the, the dangers of the Biden campaign. Now, maybe they'll be able to pivot off of this. Maybe, when the meteor hits the planet and Donald Trump says it didn't hit the planet, who knows? But this is the situation right now. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we might never get a chance to see if the Bernie theory of winning a general election bears out.
I mean, it's going to be a real problem if Donald Trump wins again. I mean, I think there's a much better chance of testing out the Sanders theory. I don't think it's with Bernie Sanders necessarily, or it won't be, I should say. But if Biden gets elected, then if Trump does, I'm very concerned we'll be too far gone.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to happen either way, but I hope that Biden can eke out a win with this this strategy that we've been talking about. We'll see. I'm afraid that there's going to be a huge gap between the Electoral College and the popular vote again, and that Trump's going to take it. But
calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello,
who's this?
Yeah, this is Frank.
Frank.
Shout out to John. I'm calling from San Antonio.
Frank from San Antonio. What's on your mind, Frank?
First time, long time. I wanted to, I didn't catch it, but I planning on watching Jamie's work, DSA sort of thing she did over the weekend, and I was, I'm a chef from New York. I'm living back in Texas just because of the pandemic situation, and I was really kind of trying to think about what a more progressive, more inclusive sort of restaurant or food industry would look like. And I think it's like really hard because it's one of those industries that really puts to the forefront all of the kind of difficulties and like living in a capitalist system in terms of, it's real labor and you're producing for people in your community, and there's like great things that come along with it. I don't know. It's just a take I haven't really heard on the show before. A subject rather.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never thought about that.
Oh, talking about restaurants?
Yeah, unionize and
restaurants
be a co-op.
and just feeding people in general. How it's hard to kind of work within your ethics to do that.
Yeah. Well, are we talking during capitalism or after? Because I have ideas for both.
Oh, sorry. In the transition, I guess.
Sure. Well, I mean, like Matt said, worker-owned co-op could be a really good way to run a restaurant, and it's a great way to run a business in general, although there are some extremely thin profit margins that people are working with in the restaurant business, where every restaurant is like constantly on the verge of closing all the time. So it might be difficult if you don't get to have like big investors or whatever. But in terms of the future, like the work of feeding everyone is something that I think a lot of people would really like to pitch in and help out with. I mean, I know I would. I know we like to throw the word commissary around here on this show, but commissaries are going to have to make a real comeback and get that's going to be the model, Like I had some pretty nice experiences at camp where I cooked food for everybody and I got to eat the food along with everybody, and I did not feel alienated from my labor. I felt really connected to it and really happy about it, as opposed to, under capitalism, where the people cooking the food do not get to eat the food, and their only connection to the people that they're serving it to is through, the market. Although I'm sure you also can make friends in your community in spite of that. So, and then, maybe the people who don't feel like cooking can clean up afterwards. It seems like it wouldn't be that hard to figure out that particular aspect of a post-capitalist social organization.
Appreciate the phone call. Oh, God, I got disconnected again. All right, folks, that's it for phone calls today. I'm going to take some IMs. Biden just condemned, this is from Doodles, just condemned rioters, saying, my story, my family story. Ask yourself, do I look like a radical socialist with a soft spot for rioters? Really disgusting appeals to fascists who will never vote for him. I mean, look, this is my point. I mean, of course he's going to say this. Of course he's going to say this. I don't think he's appealing to fascists. I think he's basically appealing to, people who don't have the same understanding of what's going on the ground that you do. And that's the vast majority of people who are living in this media universe. And what guy is going to run for president and say they're in favor of rioters? Nobody. And this is what Donald Trump is trying to do. And instead of having to be out there saying, make it about proving that he's not in favor of rioting, he's got to be able to pivot. This is what I keep saying. He's got to be able to pivot. Rioting is bad. But when we have a situation that blankety blank blank blank, that my plan blankety blank 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 addresses, and Donald Trump is not, that, this is the way that we deal with these things. And that is why we're releasing this. This is why I support this economic program or that program. I mean, that's the way you pivot off these things. But instead, he's like, but I'm still a great guy. And maybe it'll work. Maybe it'll work.
Not only a great guy, he's like an aggressive, angry old man to fight the one that we have and we don't like, right?
Right, I'm gonna beat him like a drum.
Jack,
I'm gonna beat him like a drum.
I'm gonna punch you right in the nose, Jack.
Somebody's looking for a knuckle sandwich. Dr. Chaos MD, I'm deeply concerned regarding the election for many reasons. I have heard many of those things addressed on this show. One thing I do not recall hearing discussed on this show or any show What's going to happen to the people who buy into the Democratic establishment theory that this election will be a walk in the park because Trump is so bad? None of these people seem to have been prepared themselves emotionally for a potential Trump reelect. Based upon the initial election of Trump affected them, I'm incredibly nervous about them. I'm nervous about not just people's mental state if Trump wins. I'm nervous about a whole host of material implications of Trump winning for people. But yes, Bear at home too. Sam, have you considered voting for Biden in a blue state anymore? Value. Considered the value of voting for. I mean, and welcome back. Any good vacation stories? Saul, I was trying to entertain Saul, and I bought him a White House. Tried to basically Lego set, which is incredibly expensive, like more than $100. It's an 18+ Lego set, and I thought, like, well, if I amortize this over the course of 5 or 6 days, surely it's going to take him that long. It is like, $18, $15 a day. That's the cost of a movie. But this is going to entertain him every day. And he finished it in the kid's obsessive about this stuff. He finished it in, I don't know, like 6 hours.
Was there a Lego Trump in the White House? Because that sounds like it would give a kid nightmares.
The other thing was, I was like, look, well, I mean, I wanted to say bad people live in this house. It's just some are worse than others. but instead I said, look, this house belongs to the people. And, eventually we'll get somebody in there who's going to help the people. That was basically the way that I sold it to him. But in terms of voting for Biden,
those are some high level ideas.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I talk to him. I don't know how much of what he understands what I say to him. I just his job is to catch up. Have I considered voting for Biden in a blue state any more than I had before? I to be honest with you, I hadn't really thought about it because I got a little bit of time, but I think that the strategy that Donald Trump is going to follow is going to be this. They're going to try and win on the electoral. Like Jamie says, there's going to be a big disparity. I think it's going to be greater than it was last time between the popular vote and the electoral college. I think they're going to attempt to claim, because California is going to come in. Remember, California's votes came in like 3 or 4 weeks later last year. I mean, in 2016. I think that they're going to hope that it's close. And I think that the popular vote on the night of the election, even though it's going to be completely incomplete, is going to be a factor in the political fight for Trump to retain the presidency. I mean, this is just speculation. I don't know. It could be Joe Biden wins so big that it's not even an issue. It could be Donald Trump wins so big it's not even an issue. I think both those scenarios are unlikely. I think it's more likely that it's going to be close, and every single element of the election is going to go into how it's resolved. It's going to implicate how the judges look at this. It's going to implicate how the media looks at this, et cetera, et cetera.
Do you really think the conservative judges are going to be swayed by the popular vote? Or do you think they're just going to pick who they want to have be president like they always do and find some ass backwards legal justification for it afterwards?
I tend to think that they operate under the latter frame that you're talking about, the second one. But I also think that the ability for them to operate in that second frame is easier if the vote spread is 1 vote than if it's 10 million, right? I mean, if he loses by 10 million votes in the country and there's some question about some narrow ruling that they have to make, I think 10 million is going to impact their decision more than 1.
Yeah, I'd also say probably if it was Bernie, it probably wouldn't. But if it's Biden, Biden from a self-preservation standpoint, they might not be so afraid of a Biden presidency compared to throwing it to Trump again.
Yeah, and I think so. Somewhere between 1 vote and 10 million is crossing a threshold where it'll have more impact on, because look, I don't know, maybe John Roberts has a sense of I mean, it's possible that 10 million may not even make a difference either. But look, all we're doing is playing the odds, right? Like, I can't guarantee you that you're going to catch coronavirus if you go into somebody's apartment without masks on, because maybe that person doesn't have coronavirus. Maybe they're not a super spreader. Maybe you have T cells and you're not susceptible to it. But I know that the odds of you catching it are greater than if you wear a mask. And I know that the odds are greater than if you were wearing a mask and you were outside, right? And so you just, in terms of playing the odds, and it's an infinitesimally small, calculation of what my vote will do in a blue state. But it's also like, what am I balancing that against? What am I going to do? Is I going to give a vote for Howie Hawkins? I don't know. He's been kicked off the Green Party ticket. I can write in Bernie's name, and what is that going to do? It's going to do nothing. And so it's just a question of, like, in this situation, generally a vote in a rock solid blue state does nothing too. It does nothing. But if there is a 0.001% chance that it's going to help in that regard versus 0.000000000 that voting for somebody else or writing in my name or whomever is going to, impact the future of politics, I'll take the one that's 0.0000001, just because, why wouldn't I? The outcome I want is I want Donald Trump not to be president. And there's only one person at this point, unless he keels over. And I say that half jokingly. There's only one person who's going to beat him for president, and that's Joe Biden, whether I like it or not. And I prefer Joe Biden to win than Donald Trump. And so if that means that, and if I think that, like, there's any, I can further that goal even slightly by voting for him in a blue state, which generally completely off the table, right? It wouldn't have made a difference voting for Hillary Clinton in a blue state, or one couldn't have assumed that it would. But in this instance, I'll land on it, but that's basically where my thinking is now. I mean, I would be surprised if I come up with a compelling argument not to vote for Joe Biden in a blue state, frankly. I'm open to it. I'm open to that argument. Congressional baseball fan. I was at the grocery store earlier and noticed they were having a sale. Buy one, get one free of Fig Newtons. But tell you what, right now, I'm more concerned that our election this time is one free of Big Putin. Oh, that rhymes. Zephi, that was not one of your best. Why is Biden doing a both sides routine about Portland rather than just hanging all the violence on Trump? Could run ads talking about right-wing terrorists in the streets and tie it to mass shooters like Dylan Roof. Instead, his campaign seems to believe that press will do the job for them. Is Biden ever going to go on the offense? That's the thing. I think he's afraid to do that.
Also, the press is bad, so it's not. I wouldn't think of them as a ally in putting the blame on in the proper area.
Yeah, and they don't want to scare away those suburban moderates, those white suburban moderates that they're fighting with the Republicans for right now.
But the way to do that, it seems to me, and I think he's doing this, is you criticize violence. And you criticize, and you have to criticize both sides to criticize violence. Criticize violence, and you say, this is a function of Donald Trump's America. It's a violent, more polarized America. Now, from my perspective, the country's polarized. And whether it ends up on the streets or whether it ends up in the Senate or in the Supreme Court, there is a tremendous amount of violence happening to people in terms of, as measured in terms of immiserating people and creating suffering. One is there's people actually actively fighting. At least they have, made some type of their active choice to go into a situation that could be dangerous, shouldn't be, but could be. But there's a lot of violence that's happening to people who I don't know if I can pay my rent. I've been evicted. My kids can't get education. I can't get health care. I mean, but Joe Biden's has to win this election, and he doesn't have, in my estimation, all the tools that he should have to be able to win this election. And so you start to see these like crappy measures to make up for that. And I hope it works. Abolished baby. I've seen articles now saying a second stimulus package won't come until after September or later. Well, it's August 31st. With a potential government shutdown being leveraged for the Senate now to keep refusing House advances. Have you heard any news? No, there's nothing. Look, I think if Mitch McConnell's perfectly happy, and we're going to feel it at the end of October is when it's really going to start to hit. He is perfectly happy to starve cities and states of money because they can come back and deal with this if Donald Trump wins the election. And even then, they may not do it for blue states. But this is like I was describing before vacation. It's like a kidney punch. One of those like Bruce Lee kidney punches. You punch them in the kidney, and then they die 3 weeks later. That's what's going to happen. We're going to the economy, when cities and states have to start cutting dramatically, is when we're going to see the economy really, really suffer. And we're going to start to see much more evictions happening. At one point, there's going to be a decision made by people that like, I'm going to evict you. And there's no eviction protections now. At one point, they're going to say, you got to pay us that money. The evictions deferrals have ended, the statewide protections. You're going to start to see more and more small business and, restaurants, whatnot, close because the PPP has ended. And there's just, people aren't going back inside these places, and it's going to get worse when the cold weather hits. There's
going to be Trump-villes all over the place.
Yeah, it's a problem. All right.
Or maybe Biden-villes if Biden is president when that happens.
Yep.
Who knows?
Yep. And remember, there's 3 months before they could get anything in the system at that point. Even assuming that the Democrats win the Senate and the House and the presidency, nothing's going to reach the American public in best case scenario until late February, if then, because what's going to happen is they're going to get into office. This is the best case scenario. They get into office on day one. They present this. They've done their work already, and they present this stimulus bill. And unless they make the determination that we're going to get rid of the filibuster, McConnell's going to stop it. And they're going to have to get rid of the filibuster, which is going to take some time. They have to have the Republicans because Chris Coons will never believe that the Republicans stand in the way of stimulus twice, 2 crises in a row. They're going to have to go through this whole kabuki theater where McConnell actually does it. McConnell's smart enough to know how to obstruct, and he's going to drag it out. So, I'm concerned. All right. I'll do 5 more of these and we're out here. Shpeth, can you please respond to Chris Hedges' endorsement of the Green Party over Biden? Uprisings can happen under Biden too, but it appears Hedges prefers a second Trump term to invoke radical demonstrations and violence in the streets. Don't see how that wouldn't lead to a civil war with Trump at the helm, with white nationalism. I mean, look, I heard the accelerationist theory last time about Donald Trump from people, maybe from Hedges. I don't know. I think it's absurd. I think it's absurd. Who is the Green Party candidate? I know there was some controversy with
Hawkins, right?
But there was some like big intra-Green Party fight.
Why? I mean, we're just taking this more seriously because Chris Hedges said it. It's a dumb theory.
Yeah, he's just trying to see through the theory he posited in his last book, basically.
This is
when people
ask,
need a little more time.
Yeah, when people ask why I don't talk about Hedges, because I don't read Hedges, because it takes like this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just to be clear, none of the people who I am friends with in DSA, whose opinions I was trying to represent earlier on, the arguments against leftists getting behind Biden, we need to have the threat of exit, oppositional politics, yada, yada. None of them based this on a desire for accelerationism. None of them think that things would be better under Trump. That's just nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, I need to know more specifics, but I'll tell you, back in the day, there was a lot of stuff that I thought that Hedges had the value, and some of his reporting and writing about issues that are facing the country, I think, have value. I remember he came into our office when we were doing Break Room Live and was talking about the debt and all the debt that we owed to China. And I was like, what? We owe very little percentage-wise of our debt to China. China's not going to take us over. He was very, very concerned about the debt at that time. And I just thought that maybe I was a little bit, some of the rigor wasn't necessarily there on things like that.
Yeah.
I would need to know what the objective of voting for a third party is, other than, a sense that, I don't vote against my principles. That to me is silly. It's like, I don't know. I don't use a hammer when I, even though I'm facing a nail and a piece of wood that needs to be hit in there, because I disagree with hammers or something. I don't know.
If the Green Party had a real plan to grow into a mass workers' party that would replace the Democrats, then maybe I'd throw them a vote.
Totally agree.
But I have not seen that plan from them.
In fact, it's gotten worse.
Yeah, despite them telling you
for the Green Party in the past.
Yeah.
And it's like, how much, talk about not learning a lesson. How many times do I have to see my vote go to nothing to see a party that is a joke? It's a joke. And they should be focusing on local stuff and getting even more local, because their capacity, I just think it's a mess from what I've seen. But I believe me, and I was supportive of the Green Party. I voted Green. Arguably as much. It's WFP. I voted down their line more often than not. But whenever there's a Green Party opportunity in the past, I have voted for it. In at least within the context of New York State and sometimes federal elections as well. Gezi Park Snowflake. I've lived in Turkey for over 20 years and have watched as step-by-step Erdogan eroded institutions, crushed the media, turned the police into his own Praetorian. The scale and audacity of the lies at last week's convention eclipsed anything I've ever seen go down at official ruling party event here. I feel like I'm having deja vu watching events unfold back in the States. The major difference thus far is that it took Erdogan over 10 years to gain the control that Trump seems to have already. I wonder. I don't know. It's hard. I haven't had that opportunity to compare it, but it's problematic. Chicago bureaucrat, where the hell are all the AGs out there? That Guardian article about the police forces being infiltrated by white nationalists, damn scary. They need to do some enforcement against this. Flush them out. Agreed. Beat the Reaper. Now a word from Lucy Pelosi while she's holding the football for a kick. Okay, can't handle any more racist jerks going offline to make phone calls for Alex Morris. Glad the MR team is back and healthy. Good. Melissa from Chicago, the originator of the QAnon conspiracy theory, has been outed as the founder of 8chan, Jim Watkins. Is that right?
Huh.
Morbid symptoms. Getting the vibe that the Biden campaign placing all of its hopes on fickle suburban moderates was a bad idea. We'll see. Two more. Lefty contractor. Report is in Congress to vote on marijuana legislation. Harris co-sponsoring in the Senate, and Jim Clyburn apparently sent the notice that the bill is to be voted on. Is this smarter people trying to strong-arm Biden into supporting a half-decent policy? Do you think it would help if he does change his position on this? I think, it's conceivable to me they could see the Congress pass it, House pass it, and Biden's like, still, I'm not convinced, as a way of basically bringing people on board and saying, he's pushable. And he could be. Like I say, my second favorite type of politician is a complete cipher. And because then at least there's an opportunity to push them. Joe Biden, I think, is in that category. The final I am of the day, the owl. Someone should ask Scalise if funding social workers and therapists who could have helped the guy who shot him would have made the police's job harder. All right, folks. Rick Perlstein on tomorrow. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know some